From the gridiron to the hardwood, James Mesh breaks it all down. It's time for another episode of Cleats and Sneaks.
How did the NBA allow this to happen? As you may well know, the first round of the NBA draft did happen last night. We got through the first 30 picks. Usually we get through the 2 rounds all in one night, but they decided because of money, they decided to make it first round on Wednesday night, and then during Thursday afternoon, as we're about midway into the second round right now, at the time of this recording, they decided to make it into 2 days, which is fine. I get it, more time for them to be able to show off the draft, and you kind of give more time to the teams to potentially make trades during the time on the clock, because they used to have about 5 minutes. Now they do 7 for the first round, and then they added a couple minutes to the second round as well. Potentially add some more trades, maybe a little bit more excitement like what we see with the NFL draft. But one thing that really stood out to me and irks me to the core is you look at what had happened through the first 16 picks, and it's totally understandable. The 2 Frenchmen go the first 2 picks. Reed Sheppard ends up being the 3rd. You see other guys like Donovan Clingan go 7th overall to the Trailblazers, which throws me off because they already have DeAndre Ayton. They traded last offseason for Celtics center Robert Williams, and now they take Clingan? Are you going to trade Ayton or Rob? Because if you don't, I don't understand what you're doing. But outside of that, Zach Edey, he goes 9th to the Grizzlies. You see other guys like Cody Williams, he goes 10th, and even Nikola Topic goes to the Thunder at 12. But you get down to 17, the Los Angeles Lakers pick, and you look at the first 16, and one guy that's missing is Dalton Knecht. Rated by many people online, ESPN, The Ringer, whoever you look at for your NBA analysis when it comes to the draft, he was a top 10 guy, and some people had him as high as 7. He fell all the way to 17 to the Los Angeles Lakers because of one silly reason. And it's one thing that really irks me about the NBA, and this is why I say they messed up. Too many teams nowadays are trying to go for young prospects that decided to go one and done and are 18, 19, 20 years old, which, sure, they may have shown a lot of promise in that first year, but they still have a lot of development. And we see a lot of guys don't pan out because they're still raw as a prospect, and these NBA teams and coaches think that they can make these guys and mold them into what they want them to be. And how often does that really work out? And usually those players go to teams that don't have the most stable of situations. Dalton Knecht, he's 23 years old right now, but he had 3 years of college experience. The first 2 years were in Division II when he was with the Bears. But as you saw his progress from year 1 to year 2, he doubled his points, going from 9 to 20 points per game. And then guess what? He transferred, went to Division I, went to Tennessee, and guess what? He basically did even better at the Division I level. He had 3 years of experience to develop his game, and here comes the Los Angeles Lakers, who frustrate me to the core, but they got an easy decision to make, and they actually made a good move in the draft for the first time in quite a while. The fact that teams are passing up on guys that have made progress throughout the years, and then you also look at Kyle Filipowski, who also had a few years of experience, and he doesn't fall until he gets into the second round. In day 2, he ended up being a little bit later. He ended up being the 32nd overall pick out of Duke, going to the Utah Jazz. It frustrates me because you need to find guys that have actually been able to have some progress. I'm not asking you to get a 4-year guy, but the fact that the reason like guys like Filipowski and Dalton Knecht are falling because they have years of experience and maybe they're a little bit older. Kyle's only 20, but really the main reason for Knecht's falling, instead of being a top 10 pick and him falling into the middle of the first round, was because of his age being 23 years old when they were more fascinated in trying to get a teenager on their team. I think it's an utterly ridiculous thing for NBA teams and NBA GMs to be doing when they're trying to build their team. Why not try to go for guys that can actually give you impact as of right now? Sure, there's guys like Wemby and Jason Tatum and others that were able to work out really well, but even then, they're still not perfect. They still need time to develop as well. I get for some of those generational talents, especially with Wembanyama, of course he needs to go number one overall. I would take Wemby anytime, any day. But for those other drafts, and you look at this one because it's been regarded as poor or it's a weak draft by a lot of NBA analysts, I just don't fully believe that. Just because there isn't the creme de la creme at the top for the first 5 or 6 picks, and it's somewhat even throughout the entirety of the draft, and maybe there's a slight decline as you get farther into it when you get into the class, but that shouldn't mean you should be passing up on a guy that has already proven what he can do and is looking ready to play right now. It was an absolute great move by the Los Angeles Lakers, but man, the fact that the other 16 teams did that just irritates me. I did want to at least get into a little bit of local news with the team in this area, I guess you could say, the New Orleans Pelicans. They had the 21st overall selection last night, and they got Yves Missi, who was a freshman center out of Baylor. I think it's an okay pick. The fact that you're going to be likely moving on from Jonas Valanciunas, you're very thin at the center position. You were starting, and not starting, but you were giving a lot of minutes to a 6'6" Larry Nance to play the 5, which worries me. You look at Yves Missi, he was originally born in Belgium, grew up in Cameroon, and then played high school ball not only in Maryland, but also in California. And he only started playing basketball a couple of years ago. But I do worry a little bit. It was understandable because you do need a center, and he's more of a rim protector. He's able to grab rebounds on the offensive and defensive side, which is really good. And he's a lob threat. He reminds me a lot of Rob Williams, who is a Louisiana product. But at the same time, because he is still raw in his development and he needs time to get ready and be better as an athlete and better as a basketball player, he needs time. And because of that, he has not been able to really develop much of a jump shot, and he can't really create his own shot. And that's understandable, at least to a certain extent, because he's a center. You don't usually expect centers to create their own shot. You don't see a lot of Nikola Jokic's or Bam Adebayo's out there, or even Kristaps Porzingis, the unicorn. But he needs a little bit of time. He definitely needs to develop more. His offensive game, sure, he's able to set good screens. I saw in his highlights last night after watching him get drafted by the Pelicans. I like what he did in the offensive game when it came to being a lob threat and when he was able to set screens. And even there was a couple of times where he went off the dribble from the three-point line and was able to get into the paint. But I don't know how successful you'll be able to be in doing that frequently at the NBA level. Sure, you'll be able to get some points off of lobs, doing backdoor cuts or doing the pick and roll. For sure, you're able to get some points. But if you're asking him to shoot mid-range or even threes, there's no shot he's going to be able to do that right now. I think it's an okay pick. I think it's something that you could work out later on, and maybe as time goes along, he's able to develop a little bit more and more, and it becomes a solid rotational piece. But I do not expect him to be any sort of quote-unquote savior or major contributor to the Pelicans organization for the years to come. I know he's been compared to guys like Jackson Hayes, who was also someone that had recently played basketball, very athletic, a lot of raw talent, a raw overall prospect. But the difference between those two was Jackson Hayes isn't very serious about his craft. He's not really looking to improve. He just kind of enjoys playing basketball, but he's not really a student of the game. Looking at Yves Missi, he looks a little bit more like he actually really wants to improve and make himself the best overall basketball player that you can ask for, which is a good sign. That doesn't mean that he's going to be a great player, but you are still seeing good signs out of that, and it leaves you at least hopeful that he's not going to be another bust for the New Orleans Pelicans. And before we sign up for another edition of Cleats and Sneaks, hope you've been enjoying the video so far. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, ESPN_SWLA, and also turn on that notification bell. That way you get notified anytime we upload any one of our podcasts or local content, not only the four-tire change with Dawson Iserlo over par with Matt Miguez, or even the Miguez mindset with, of course, Matt Miguez himself. But stuff like maybe the Manning Passing Academy, that's going to be coming up tomorrow. We're also going to be having local content with the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. Allison Habits, she's now the softball head coach for the program, which is a good sign. Local product, pretty good. Probably talk about what's going on with the NBA a little bit more, but I do want to look at what had happened with the Celtics pick at number 30 overall to end the first round last night. They ended up getting Baylor Shireman out of Creighton, which I really liked a lot. Sure, he's more of a 3-and-D type of guy, but that's exactly what you're looking for. You're looking for another wing shooter and defender, because you can never have enough of those in the NBA nowadays. And you're also looking at what the Celtics are going to be able to do. I think when it comes to Derek White and the Sam Hauser contracts, you're looking to get both of them. But if you're only going to get one or the other, you're probably going to side on Derek White's side. So if Sam Hauser is to go, Shireman feels like the perfect replacement, and he seems like a guy that you could plug and play because he's also 23, 24 years old, who has had quite a few years of experience and development in the college game. So he should be a little bit more ready than maybe some of these other prospects. I don't expect him to be a huge contributor, but if he can do anything like we had seen with Sam Hauser before in his couple years with the Celtics, I'm excited to see what happens. Appreciate you listening in, and I'll talk to you next week on another edition of Cleats and Sneaks.